I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. MADD Charlotte County is launching a crash car awareness campaign across the county this June. Here to tell us more about it is Vice President of MADD Charlotte County, Jordan Holmes. Thank you, Jordan, so much for being here today and sitting down with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. But to kick off, let's talk a little bit about what is the crash car awareness campaign? What can people expect?
So it's more or less a loose national campaign that MADD Canada has invited chapters to put on. Each chapter sort of decides whether or not they're going to participate. We decided we're going to participate this year. So what people can expect to see is starting June 2nd until June 30th. We've currently arranged for 2 vehicles to be located, and the vehicles are crashed, as you might expect. They have some decals on them indicating, that MADD Canada is involved, or in our case, MADD Charlotte County. The vehicles are going to be positioned, we've got one in St. George. It's going to be located just kind of on the corner as you're coming up towards CCM and the pharmacy. And then we have one arranged for St. Stephen. So this one's going to be at the Border Arena. You'll see it just on the left-hand side as you're coming into town. It's going to be kind of located closer to the road in the parking lot there. That one may stay there until the end of the month. I've been kind of working with the town on it, and they say, well, it's kind of a long time to have the car there. It might, get in the way of regular use of the arena. So if we have to move it, we might move it halfway through the month. But the one in St. George will be there until June 30th. As of today, we're hoping we'll be able to work on having a vehicle located in St. Andrews. That would probably be in July, if not sometime later this year.
So we'll look to your website and Facebook pages for updates on when it might be in St. Andrews. From similar campaigns you've done with MADD in the past, what do you hope the takeaway is from this campaign? I'm
hoping that people will see just how visceral and impactful it is to see a collision like this. And I think most people have probably seen a collision at some point in their life, but I think to have it there constantly as a sort of constant reminder, and people coming by, commuting to their jobs or going to school, or I know school's going to be out pretty soon, but you're going to see it there, and I'm hoping it'll just be a reminder of what it looks like. It's serious. Mm-hmm. Is it it's a car that would have been in an accident? Yeah, most likely. It's we don't have a whole lot of control over what the vehicle will look like exactly. Mm-hmm. We've requested lighter color vehicle just so that our decals are a little more visible on them, but it'll be pretty clear that this vehicle was in a collision, and we don't know what the cause of the collision was, and it's not as important as seeing the vehicle itself. What was it about MADD that drew you into being a part of the Charlotte County chapter and in your role as vice president? So I joined the chapter a few years back, and I was a victim of impaired driving almost 10 years ago. Be 10 years July 2nd. Fortunately I survived, didn't have any passengers with me, but it's always been kind of that thought about why this happened and how this could have been avoided. It's always sort of there. It's not there as much these days, but knowing that, I never really considered actually working with MADD until I was invited to become a part of MADD, and I said, oh, well, I didn't know you could just join, right, and start working. I didn't even know we really had a chapter. I didn't know how any of that worked. Naturally, I usually when I get involved in something, I find I become very vocal and I have a lot of ideas and stuff like that. So, I became the vice president, would have been a year and a half ago. So my term would be up at the end of this year. And I more or less just support our chapter president with, whatever she happens to need some assistance with.
Why was it important for you to get involved, having had your own experiences being hit by a drunk driver? What was it about that experience that maybe you still carry with you today that keeps you motivated to be a part of this?
Well, I think there's a lot in that question, but honestly, just the fact that it happened to me at a very young age. I do consider myself somewhat fortunate that it wasn't much worse than what I experienced, and I have met victims who have gone through much worse, and seeing that it's overwhelmingly a younger demographic that tends to be impacted, that really does kind of hit home for me. I mean, I'm still young, so naturally, I don't want to see people my age and younger, or any age really, having to go through that. So, and it's important for people to understand. It's, you might feel confident behind the wheel under the influence, but it doesn't matter. It's a risk that you don't need to take.
Mm-hmm. And you were young when this happened to you. Why is this statistic, do you think, so high with younger people? Is it just that they're out at certain hours? Is it a combination of factors?
I can speculate. I mean, I think it does have a lot to do with younger people tend to be out at later hours. They might be out partying, not necessarily drinking and driving, but they could be out just having fun. I myself, I was just coming home from a road trip. I happened to leave fairly late, so it was quite late when I was leaving, and I mean, it happened the night of July 1st, so it's almost like a perfect storm. But again, it shouldn't have happened. And it's not to say that people of all ages can't be involved in a collision. I mean, people drink at all kinds of different hours, and they drive at all kinds of different hours. So when you mix the two, it can happen anytime to anyone.
It's really, really quite astonishing how many of us have been either touched by it, someone in our family or friends. But is there data that really illuminates how big a problem it really still is?
There's a little bit of data. It's a bit broad, I would say. Stats Canada has data on impaired driving cases. I think we have something like over the last 5 or so years, maybe an average of about 70 to 80,000 cases per year. When you put that in perspective, it's over 200 a day, which that's kind of a lot across Canada, mind you. But when you break that down, and we have stats in New Brunswick as well for impaired driving, and again, very broad. They don't cover certain things like impaired driving with recreational vehicles. So I mean, we have lots of folks around here have side-by-sides, and not so many snowmobiles these days, but boats, all that. None of that really fits under the same category as driving while impaired with a motor vehicle on the road, right? When you get people on the trails with a side-by-side, and mind you, I think a lot of people are fairly confident, but you will encounter people driving under the influence for sure. So the stats don't really cover the broad spectrum of driving while impaired, unfortunately. I think it's probably safe to say MADD Canada is pushing to, make those changes. I don't think it's easy to do. I think the trails and the lakes and rivers are not as thoroughly enforced by RCMP or rangers or anything like that. But in New Brunswick, we have, I think it's per 100,000, I think we've had on average something like 215 cases or something like that, which is lower than most provinces. But all the provinces have different ways of kind of handling the data. They categorize things differently, and so there's a lot of margin of error in that data.
Okay. Obviously, MADD campaigns are very well known. MADD's been around for for many decades. But when it comes to the advocacy work that MADD does, what are some of the things that you're working towards right now and that you'd like to draw attention to?
So MADD Canada has a bunch of things that it's doing. We're participating in some things and not other things, and it's really just based on what resources we have available. But like MADD Canada has victim services, for example. That's something that anyone can access. We have a victim services coordinator here in New Brunswick, actually, who handles all of Atlantic Canada. She's up in Woodstock, I believe, Megan Wetmore. So she is like the main point of contact for any victims that are looking for support, whether they happen to be like myself, injured in a collision, or you know, if they lost someone, or even if they know someone who was injured. And I've met with Megan, and I've talked with her a few times, and you know, she's very, you know, she's on the ball with that stuff typically. So that's there for everyone, regardless of what our chapter is doing. We've been sort of pushing a bit more within our chapter to just sort of be out there in the community. We try to participate in whatever events happen to be going on. A few months back, I don't know if you're familiar with the Eastern Charlotte Community Meals. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. So we did a meal there. You know, we'll probably revisit if we want to do that again. We might. We've sort of participated in different like fundraising activities. Walk 'Cause We Care back in October. Mm-hmm. We contributed a little in the coldest night of the year back mm-hmm. in February. So we're trying to just be out in the community. We did a check stop, which was back in April. I'm trying to remember I can't remember the date exactly, but we had a check stop, and that was up by the post office in St. George. So basically what we do with those is we work with the RCMP, and we more or less just kind of set up a stop, try to get people to stop, let them know, you know, we're advocating. Usually we're handing out goodies, and a few people have donated some money too. And I mean, we're not holding our hands out constantly, but you know, if people want to donate, there is a way to donate. So we're just trying to be out there and visible. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily want to constantly be alienating people with, you know, stop drunk driving, and you know, yeah, obviously that's what we're, you know, that's our mandate. People know what we're trying to do, but you know, this is more of a way to just sort of be a positive mm-hmm. Influence on the community.
I was at a MADD event at the St. Andrews Fire Station. I believe it was in fall, winter, ribbon campaign. Mm-hmm. And Corporal Jason Hansen, everyone knows quite well in this area from the RCMP, yeah. was there, and he shared the story of losing his mom to a drunk driver. She was a pedestrian at the time. And I think, you know, while those are hard stories to hear, they really do make an impact, because you see these faces of people in your community whose lives have been, you know, irreconcilably altered because of someone's poor judgment. Are a lot of the people tied to MADD Charlotte County, have they been impacted by drunk driving? Because I think those, you know, I know those are sad stories to hear, but they really do make a difference.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know all the stories exactly, but I think most of our board members and volunteers have been impacted in some way. You know, someone close to them lost or injured. I myself, I was injured. So it's you know, it speaks obviously to them wanting to, you know, try to make a difference there. But it's also a shame that we don't have more people who weren't impacted. Mm. I mean, it's kind of almost like it takes a tragedy for right. someone to sort of step up and try to make it so that it doesn't happen to the next person. And that's no one's fault, right? Mm. I wouldn't blame anyone for not wanting to be involved. But if anyone did want to be involved, we're always welcoming anyone that wants to be part of the board or just volunteer.
What would be the best way for someone to reach out
So probably the easiest way to access a lot of the information I'm sharing today actually is if you go on madd.ca/Charlotte County. That'll basically, like, there will be, there's a link to donate, there's a link to apply to be a member. I think there's a few other things on there as well. So that would be one of the better places to go. You can also find our email address, and the email address is basically monitored either by myself or the president. So, I mean, mind you, we're all volunteers, so we check it when we can, right?
MADD, though, has been, I mean, I remember seeing commercials my whole life, even as a kid. I've been impacted by the work that you do. How have you measured your success over the years? What impact do you think MADD has had on drunk driving in general in North America?
I think really a key element maybe is MADD is like if I were to use branding as a term, it's recognized brand. People know what it stands for. I think that in and of itself is, it has influence. But I think a lot of what MADD has been doing is not as visible in the public eye because they've done more with lobbying the government and working with law enforcement, trying to sort of push, policy changes, law changes, trying to push for new technology to be implemented by RCMP and provincial and municipal police forces. So you don't see as, I mean, there's still lots of different ways that MADD is trying to connect with people across Canada. I think we don't see quite as much of the typical advertising, or at least I don't see it. Maybe other people do, but so they're having more of an influence on the gears of the machine, more or less, and not just as much on the community side, trying to keep the community informed and trying to educate and protect the community.
Are there still policies that you'd like to see changed, or laws that would make a positive impact on the numbers we still see?
My perspective on it might run a little differently than MADD's. I'm kind of a bigger fan of reform as opposed to just throw someone in jail and let them rot. We want to find out why the behavior is happening and then look for solutions. Mm-hmm. Not just, this person committed a crime. We've decided that this is how long they're going to be punished or what their punishment will be, and that's the end of it. And a lot of the punishments that I've seen are things like driving prohibitions for a set period of time and retraining, and in some cases they're forced to have a breathalyzer installed in their vehicle, and if they don't keep the if they don't satisfy the demands of the breathalyzer, the vehicle might shut down, and it's like, well, that's not really making the road safer, is it? So some of the things I don't necessarily agree with, but the main thing is if it's going to push us towards, even if it saves one life, it's worth it.
You mentioned earlier technological changes that have been implemented to detect drunk driving, to deal with drunk driving. How has that changed the landscape of how we can prevent drunk driving?
I think a lot of the training has sort of shifted, and it's different. Each province has sort of different ways of handling it. Some provinces may be better than others or more modern than others. The technological differences, like a lot of it is just machines, equipment that can, detect. Because in the past it was things like checking someone's breath, and really what it was about picking up how much alcohol is coming up in the droplets in their breath. Hard to do that with certain substances. So they've had to make some changes, and I don't know the exact science of the technology, unfortunately, but they've made a lot of changes to the training and the equipment overall within the RCMP, and I'm sure a lot of other law enforcement agencies have adopted similar methods.
Are there any misconceptions about drunk driving that still seem to be around today, whether it's that you're fine if you have a couple drinks or things like that, that really complicate people's understanding of how dangerous it is?
I don't know how many drinks a person can, maybe someone can have a beer and get behind the wheel and they're fine. And they'll make it home. And here's the thing is, like, more often than not, when someone is technically impaired and driving, they probably won't get into a collision, right? The odds are pretty good, but they're not zero. And they're obviously going to be much higher than if they were sober. So I don't know what more we can do in our community specifically. I think even if we had robust public transportation, I mean, I grew up in a city that had robust public transportation, and guess what? It still happens, right? So it doesn't make it go away. It might reduce it a little bit, but I mean, we live in a community where we're kind of used to, if we want to drive somewhere, well, just get in your car and go. Mm-hmm. So that culture wouldn't necessarily even change, even if we did have, this sort of robust public transportation system. We don't really have much in the way of cabs, at least not a network throughout Charlotte County, unfortunately. I think you get cab services cropping up here and there, and they don't last, I find, typically. But I think really the solution is just have a friend whose turn it is to maybe don't drink tonight, and either that or make arrangements to if you're going out somewhere, have someone come pick you up, or maybe don't drink. I mean, we're not trying to stop people from drinking and having fun, but I can tell you what's not fun is what happens if you try to get behind the wheel after.
If you could have one message sink in with people who are watching at home today, what's the one message with all the work you do that you really hope stays with people?
I mean, we're talking about a lot of negative stuff here. I think at the end of the day, I want people to more or less just, I don't even know how to put it into words, but I want people to see the message is supposed to be about positivity. It's supposed to be about, message of support. I think what our chapter is doing right now is great. Rather than just stomping our feet and holding up signs, just try to be a positive influence. Show that there's a better way, right? I mean, we've lost some people in our community fairly recently. And every time it happens, it's a tragedy, and it's preventable. And the other thing that I would add is people often use the word accident whenever there's a collision involving an intoxicated driver, and it's not an accident, right? It's not. Call it a crash, a collision, whatever you want, but it's a criminal activity. Accidents are preventable, mm-hmm. And getting intoxicated and driving is, it's not an accident, right? You made a choice.
That's honestly a very, very good point, and a very impactful way to put it too. When we come back to the Crash Car campaign, if there's one takeaway from experiencing that we'll have in Charlotte County this June at multiple locations to have the opportunity to experience, what do you hope people who, if they do get a chance to go, take away from just being in the presence of the campaign?
I just hope people see what an impact it can have to be at that kind of a scene. I want people to realize that it's serious. You don't think it's serious until you go through it. As someone who's been through it, trust me when I say that it's not worth it. to go through it to realize how bad it can be. It's just, yeah, I mean, you're going to see the results of one poor decision that you can make. And so hopefully people seeing that will look at that and perhaps make a better decision.
Well, Jordan, I appreciate so much you coming in today to shed more light on the campaign, but also on the incredible work you do at MADD. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My guest today has been Jordan Holmes, Vice President of MADD Charlotte County. MADD Charlotte County is putting on a crash car awareness campaign from June 2nd to 30th right here in Charlotte County. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.